Joe Rogan welcomes the most powerful man in the world, Elon Musk, to his podcast studio, where they talked about a range of topics from how young Elon looks to how good he is in bed to how he's not a Nazi to how he's cleaning up the government. They really had a broad range of topics. They really covered all the ways in which Elon is the greatest man who's ever lived. A very hard hitting interview, as we've come to expect from Joe these days. So here is one where they talk about the media and how new media has replaced legacy media. So let's take a listen here.
Whole thing's very crazy. The media is incredibly partisan. They're not. Almost all the media is left shifted.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird if you talk to somebody who gets all their information from like what I call legacy media. They're living in a different world.
Yeah.
Than if they say are listening to your podcast or getting news from X or just if it's kind of wild. Like
it is very wild.
Like you talked, it's like they're living in an alternate reality.
Oh, there's a lot of people that I talk to that I have to go, where did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like the Associated Press, which I call Associated Propaganda, the AP, they ran a international news story saying that Doge fired air traffic controllers, but we didn't fire any air traffic controllers at all. In fact, we're trying to hire air traffic controllers, not fire them.
Yeah, I saw that. You made a tweet about it, right?
All right. Go ahead. Russell found that clip. So you've prepared a little something about that.
All right. This is what is so maddening and dangerous and difficult about this moment. I don't know specifically about the AP claim that he makes. Could be true, might not, and that's the point. What they're saying overall about the corporate media is a critique anyone on the left has been making for years and years and years and years. And to be fair, on the right, it's just, yes, everyone who's not a completely Kool-Aid drinking shitlib knows the corporate media lies, that they are serving an agenda, that they're serving a power elite in the narratives that they peddle. You can see what that's done to all the people sending out the Ukraine flags who don't know the first fucking thing about that conflict, except what they heard about it on CNN. Absolutely. Problem is, and the way that they're using this, using your valid mistrust of the mainstream media, is to say we can be trusted, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, just for a few examples here. So you can trust Elon, right? Musk's cost-cutting drive quietly deletes billions in claimed savings from website. Now, we did a whole piece about this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The wall of receipts, they have to keep taking down the claims that they make. They keep making outrageous claims. They've saved $800 billion. If you look at the evidence, absolutely not true. So they say, hey, you talk to people who get their media this way. It's like they're living in a parallel universe. I'm sure most of the people in our audience have literally said that about their aunt at Thanksgiving, right? Who just watches MSNBC. But they're leading you to believe that they're better, and they're really not better. Now, you might ask, what's the solution? Become a patron of our show, and I mean, in all seriousness, independent media, vet it, and find independent media you can trust. Sources like the Gray Zone, like Electronic Intifada, like there are worthy independent media groups out there. Certainly the solution is not to listen to the world's richest man who has an agenda to make himself even richer and to get rid of all restraints on his power. So now here's a very good example of true but misdirection. So he tweeted out, or quote tweeted, turns out it wasn't really all Soros and other nefarious billionaire money. It was the money of all hardworking Americans being used to subvert the West and the rest of the world. And Elon says, true, Soros figured out how to leverage a relatively small amount of his money into massive taxpayer money. Now, to elaborate on this a little bit, he says this in the Rogan interview, and he's been talking a lot about this, how basically people like Soros have used their money to set up NGOs that they then use their influence over the political process to get money funneled into those NGOs so that they get a lot of bang for their buck in terms of the political projects that they're trying to enact. They start the NGO and then essentially get the government to fund it through their influence on the government. Now, is that true? I mean, it's consistent with my understanding of how this system works. I don't trust Elon as far as I could throw him, but that doesn't mean everything he says is a lie. I'm inclined to believe that's probably true. You know what else is true? Trump picked Scott Bessent for Treasury despite ties to Democratic mega donor George Soros. Now, this isn't like he worked an internship one summer for Soros. He was in the London office when they crashed the British pound. He was probably, almost certainly, involved in that. Now, this is what Elon is not going to tell you. He's giving you the impression in this interview, yeah, well, you listen to Joe Rogan, you go to X, you're going to get the real truth. Okay, well, you're not going to get this truth, are you? How about this? Israeli-U.S. billionaire Miriam Adelson gives $100 million to Trump campaign. Do you think Elon is ever in a million years going to tweet about that on X? Ever. Moving along. Elon Musk donated $288 million to 2024 election. Final tally shows. Now he's trying to get out of that. I've seen. He's saying, well, but look how much more Soros gives. That's really beside the point. He's been at the game a lot longer than Elon has. He's older. Was he 40 years older than Elon? I'm sure by the time Elon is 170, he'll have given as much money as George Soros has to the political project. He's certainly making up for lost time when you look at the numbers. He doesn't want you to talk about that. Listen to that. Think about this for a second. You're listening to a guy who essentially bought the presidency, just bought it, $288 million. He's got his run of the place, right? He's got all the key cards. Yeah, Elon, you go rifle through everyone's private information.
He does press conferences in the Oval Office.
He does with Trump sitting.
Right there.
Yeah. He bought the presidency. He bought it.
Yeah.
And he's telling you, yeah, what that Soros guy is doing, you better look at that. Now, it's not that he's wrong per se about Soros. I don't know the details. I haven't had time to research that. Elon says a lot of shit, but let's assume it's true. What we do know is true is Soros has undue influence on our politics. So does Elon.
Right.
So is his issue that Soros has this influence, or is his issue that he wants that influence? He doesn't want Soros's influence to counter his influence. Again, this is what we keep saying. This is not a battle between the people and the elites. This is a battle between different wings of the elites. Or as Chris Hedges says, it's the corporatists versus the oligarchs, and the oligarchs are winning. Moving along. Okay, so he says listening to Joe Rogan show is a great prescriptive for the misinformation you get from corporate media. You're going to get the real dope facts from Rogan. Now, I've covered this extensively once, more in brief another time. It bears mentioning again if you think listening to Joe Rogan is where you go to get the straight scoop. This is fucking criminal Mark Andreessen, who should be spending the rest of his life in prison for robbing average working people like most of you of their life savings with no accountability whatsoever, telling you what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is. And I'm going to show you just within the first minute, everything he says is a lie.
With this thing called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, which was it's sort of Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she gets to control. And it's an independent agency that just gets to run and do whatever it wants, right? And if you read the Constitution, like there is no such thing as an independent agency, and yet there it is.
What does her agency do?
Whatever she wants.
What does it do, though?
Basically, terrorize financial institutions, prevent fintech, prevent new competition, new startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
How so?
just by terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything new in financial services. And
Can you give me an example?
Well, like I said, debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from. Is these agencies? So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
Exactly, like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee who
For what?
For having the wrong politics, for saying unacceptable things.
I like that.
Under current.
Okay.
He should have a soundboard when he interviews these people because his responses are all very predictable. Really? That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah,
How
yes,
does
I-
that happen? Whoo! Ah.
Right. Really? And you know what we got from a lot of people? You don't get Joe. Joe says he's a pothead moron. Well, he didn't say that when Elon said you're where people should go for information, did he? Did he
Right.
stop and say, Elon, I mean, really, no one should come to me for information. I'm just a pothead moron. No, he didn't say that. He took that mantle very gladly. Well, now, if you are going to take that mantle, you have some responsibility to get your crew to do some cursory research and hand you 5 pages before you interview a fucking criminal miscreant like Humpty Dumpty, aka Mark Andreessen. Now, in terms of what he just said there, okay, so I'm still getting people who are arguing with us about this. No, that's Elizabeth Warren's agency. Okay, so why did Trump fire Rohit Chopra, director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? If what he just said, it's Elizabeth Warren's private agency, which is just insane on the face of it. Yeah, he's right. There's no such thing as an unaccountable independent agency, as Trump is discovering. That's why the courts keep challenging his policies. That's what the courts are for. There is no rogue. I mean, the CIA and the FBI have been operating illegally like that, but it's illegal. That's the point. You can't just run as a rogue agency. So if Elizabeth Warren, if this was her private agency, as some people on the strength of this moronic interview still seem to believe, if it's her agency, why didn't she have to be fired? Have you heard about Elizabeth Warren being fired from the agency so that they can take it over, as they have been doing? No, because it's not her agency. He's lying to you. He is straight up lying to you. Moving along. Okay, they debank you for having the wrong politics. Actually, the CFPB was a very aggressive anti-debanking agency, including for CFPB defends Christian groups. That's funny. You get debanked for your politics. In a surprising twist, the CFPB is fighting to protect Christian groups from discriminatory debanking. The agency argues its authority to address unfair practices is crucial for safeguarding religious organizations and other groups from unjust financial exclusion. Wow. Well, that doesn't sound anything like what he just said. So why is he lying to you? Straight up lying to you about what this agency does? Because he's a criminal. Because his venture capital firm financed one of these very dodgy fintech companies that of the kind that the CFPB could theoretically fine or take to court or impose rules upon, robbed people of their life savings. You have people, poor people. There was one story there. This poor woman had $284,000 in retirement savings. I think by the time Andreessen got done with her, she had like a few $100s to her name. He doesn't want to be held accountable for that. And the CFPB holds people like him accountable for things like that. But he just goes on Joe Rogan, says a bunch of bullshit, and Rogan goes, really? Tell me more. That's where Elon is saying people should go. Yes, everything he's saying about the corporate media is absolutely true. You could say the same exact thing about Elon, about X, about Joe Rogan, about this whole constellation of disinformation peddlers. They're just peddling you the kind of disinformation that favors them, and they're distracting you by calling out the type of disinformation that does not.
Right. Exactly. I did look into the AP article. At least I thought I did. I couldn't find the tweet that Rogan was referring to. So I believe the article they're referring to is where the AP says that they were laying off air traffic control staff which is admittedly obviously very deceptively worded, because in the text of the article they don't say they fired air traffic controllers. They mention that Trump fired a lot of people from the Aviation Security Advisory Committee, which is safety-related staff, but it's not air traffic controllers. So, yeah, I mean, guilty as charged, they worded it in the... If I assume that's the headline he's talking about. I didn't see the tweet, so that's why I didn't put it as an exhibit. But, yeah, no, I mean, look, with Twitter, you can never just assume that what you see on there is true. You should never assume it's not true, but you cannot assume it's true. You have to verify. That's why we did a whole piece about the big pharma donations and open secrets, where that was everywhere on X. Everywhere on X was that Bernie and Elizabeth Warren were top bundlers of big pharma, which was, of course, fucking nonsense. Those were people who worked in that industry. You're talking about pharmacists, rank and file people who work at a pharmaceutical warehouse or whatever. You know, you're not talking about the executives of the PACs. Again, that context totally missing. I'm going to share the screen here to show you another example of this, because this is something that really kind of made the rounds a lot. I didn't know you were going to mention the CFPB. Otherwise, I would have made a file out of this.
You knew I was doing entries.
I knew. Well, yeah, but that was, I mean, it was too late to make it at that point. I saw it right prior to the show. But this piece here, okay, so if you look at this tweet, this got 1.7 million views. Elizabeth Warren 15 years ago on government spending. You know, when that much money disappears, it's usually because somebody broke some laws somewhere. Well, that aged well. So this was thought of as a big own. It says right in the video, 15 years ago on government spending.
It's usually because somebody broke some laws.
See? Can't play that because of the music, but it's usually because someone broke some laws somewhere. Here, I'll mute it. It's subtitled. But if we don't look, if we don't ask, if we don't uncover it, make it all public, we'll never find out. We are here to fight back, and there's a video of her here to fight back.
We should have called Steph for this segment.
What's that?
Should have called Steph for this segment. She does a good Elizabeth Warren.
She does. She does. Anyway, the point there is the tweet there, as you can see, it says Elizabeth Warren on government spending. Do you guys know what that video is? Do you know what the context of this video is, what this interview was? This was Elizabeth Warren doing an interview for the Michael Moore movie called Capitalism, a Love Story. And what she's referring to there in terms of money disappearing, she's referring to the financial institutions who were bailed out by the government, who were not being transparent about how they spent the bailout money. So that video is actually a critique of private financial institutions. It is not a critique of government spending. No community note, no reference check, nothing. You can share absolute bullshit on Twitter very, very easily if you don't bother verifying what you're looking at. So, yeah, mainstream media created this problem by tanking their credibility. And a lot in alternative media are compounding the problem by spreading absolute nonsense with zero respect for the journalistic process whatsoever. None at all. So the idea that the Joe Rogan Experience or Elon Musk's Twitter feed or the Twitter feeds of the influencers that he boosts in the algorithm are an adequate replacement for mainstream media is nonsense. You're just getting a different version of propaganda with no real paper trail. Like, at least, like, look, we cite mainstream sources. What Chomsky says about the mainstream media is right. You can't just not read it, because institutions like the Times and like CNN and the Post, they have the resources to go out and do reporting that schmucks like us don't. So you have to read it.
All we have is Jose to go yell at people.
Exactly. We just got Jose to go yell at people. So you have to read it. You just have to read it with a critical eye. You have to read it with a critical eye so that you understand where the perspective is coming from and how to see through that, right? And you have to do the same thing with the alt media. You have to do the same exact thing. Only you might have to do a little more work, because if you see something like that with no link to where the source is, you would never know. How many people shared that video thinking Elizabeth Warren was talking to Michael Moore in an anti-capitalist documentary? The chuds were all over that as a big own of government spending. It was actually the exact opposite. She was actually doing an interview for a Michael Moore movie about the malfeasance of private capital.
Well, this is what's so sad. You have so many people who are so desperate and so mentally broken that they will actually think that going to the social media platform owned by the world's richest man and slavishly believing every influencer that he boosts, everything that he quote tweets, every observation that he makes, that somehow that's winning, that Elon is on their side, because they're desperate, man. They feel like they're so weak, so desperate for a solution, they'll listen to anyone who pretends to be on their side. See, this is the thing with Democrats. They don't even pretend. They basically tell you they don't like you. They don't listen to the music you listen to. They don't dress like you dress. They don't read what you read. They don't like what you like, and they're damn proud of it. Elon will go out there and be like, yeah, these woke people are really ruining your life. And by the way, get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau so I can rob you blind. It's for me. It's for me. Man. I mean, you got to kind of feel sorry for it. It's sad, but it's not a solution. If you recognize that the corporate media puts people in a parallel universe, dude, if you just keep parroting what Elon says, you're in that parallel universe too, for anyone who's actually paying attention.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Big time.
Please clap.